Pablo, good to see how you doing. JP, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Just trying to pin the live show. I think some CMF members forgot that regarding the whole daylight savings things, because the UK went back 1 hour. I should have let everyone know again, just to remind everybody. Sorry about that. Hi, Messi. Good to see you. How you doing? Evening, Miles. Autistic. Good to see you. How you doing? Happy Pisces. Good to see you. How you doing? Hey, Miles. CMF Comatose. Good to see you. How you doing? Hi, Miles. What's the next for XLP? Is it close time for pump? Johnny, we're getting there. Let me just pin the live show. Pin to your profile. Okay. Evening, Miles and CMF. Jason, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Hello, Miles. Hope you're well. Any good news? Yes, Teeth. There's quite a bit of news to go from tonight's live. Exceptionally good news, to be fairly honest, regarding the US and China situation. Time change, comatose? Not really. Yes and no. Regarding the daylight savings situation, the UK has went back 1 hour. That's why on Friday's live, I said that no matter if the clocks go back 1 hour or forwards 1 hour, always remember that it's 10 p.m. UK time, no matter what. If we go back 1 hour, if we go forwards 1 hour, it's always going to be 10 p.m. on the dot UK time. So not really a time change. It's just that we went back 1 hour due to daylight savings. Good evening, Miles. Hope you had a great weekend. I look forward to you live. Let's go, Addy. Good to see you. How you doing? Good evening, Miles. How are you doing? I'm doing great, Kelly. Good to see you. How you doing? Evening, Miles, and all. Susie, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Good day, Miles. Mike, good to see you, brother. How you doing? How you been? Good evening, Miles and CMF. Good to see you, Free Forever. How you doing? How you been? Why some saying XRP will be $1,000? How is this possible? A lot of things are possible inside the crypto space, but a few things have to fall into line for that to happen. Hi, Miles and CMF family. Everyone, good to see you. How you doing? Morning, Miles and CMF. Shelly, good to see you. Morning. How you doing? UK time going back and back in development. Evening, mate. Pure, good to see you. How you doing? Greetings, Miles and CMF. Ray, good to see you. How you doing? Kamal, good to see you, brother. How you doing? How you been? Good to see everyone's tuned in. Okay, let's do intro, disclaimer, and what we're going to go through on tonight's live. Welcome to the CMF live show. If you're watching this for the first time ever, the CMF stands for Crypto Mouse Family. My name is Miles. You can tune to this live Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. UK time onwards for the most recent news regarding cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, politics, regulations, pretty much all the vital information you should know about regarding the world completely transforming into a digital space. The disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. And also, this is episode 395 of the CMF Live. And as always, we do Q&As in this live, which means if you do have any questions, drop it down to the comment section. I'm more than happy to help you out. And also, before we do go through the first news, just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has already smashed the like button and smashed the retweet button on X, if you're watching this on X, and for putting a comment outside the live. Thanks so much to everyone who's also essentially liked the live shows and put a comment outside the live watching on YouTube. If you haven't done that, CMF members, take 2 seconds just to smash the like buttons and the retweet buttons and put a comment outside the live. Now, on tonight's live, we're going to talk about US and China. It seems like everything has completely calmed down, which is great news for the entire crypto space and the stock market, to be fairly honest. We're also going to be talking about some perspective news of what's to come, essentially moving forward inside the crypto space. Now, obviously, we still do have a government shutdown situation, but that does seem to also might be resolving itself as we go further along. The biggest one essentially was the US and China situation. The tensions have calmed down now, which is great. So we're going to go through some perspective news. We're going to go through some ETF news announcements of what could possibly to come. And we're also obviously going to be going through some Ripple news towards the end of the live show as well, as always, and some in between. So The first news we are going to be covering is regarding the bull market for the entire crypto space, regarding altcoins and even Bitcoin this time around, because things are different regarding the ETFs, the institutions, the banks, the regulations, the governments, the treasuries. A lot of things are very different this time around. Now, before we go for the first news, just let's go inside the comment section first, and then we go straight into the first news. So let's see what's happening there. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Hope all is well. Seeing explosive markets soon for XRP. I do too, I'll be very honest. Now, despite essentially leaders, Richard, good to see you. So how you doing? Perfect timing, because we're about to go for the first essentially part of the live show. So, despite essentially crypto leaders predicting the bull market despite current bearish sentiments. The only bearish sentiments we have inside the crypto space is regarding the whole government shutdown situation, because the China situation has now calmed down. Prominent crypto figures say bearish market sentiment signals a bullish future for cryptocurrencies, with potential gains for essentially Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the entire crypto space, based on essentially on the factors of macroeconomic essentially factors and institutional actions inside the crypto space and even regulations. This bearish sentiment paradox suggests significant future bull market essentially rallies, with macroeconomic shifts and institutional investments positioning major cryptocurrencies to potentially lead strong gains in coming months. Bearish sentiments essentially amongst crypto investors is creating a bullish setup instead for major cryptocurrencies. Prominent leaders including Arthur Hayes, Michael Saylor, foresee an upward trend essentially for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the entire crypto space based on the institutions, the regulations, and everything else at play. Arthur Hayes, the former BitMEX essentially CEO, predicts BTC will hit $250,000 still by the end of 2025, citing Federal Reserve liquidity as the main catalyst for this. Michael Saylor, everybody knows him, the king of Bitcoin when it comes to corporate Bitcoin. MicroStrategy accumulated so far 506,137 Bitcoins, suggesting essentially significant institutional confidence and positioning the future of the essentially company's growth on Bitcoin's play. Market developments, including essentially GameStop, the $1.48 billion crypto treasury integration, and Circle's IPO filing. These financial actions underscore potential growth in digital asset adoption and treasury management, also reflecting broader institutional embracing of cryptocurrencies. Analysts also forecast bullish outcomes driven by regulatory essentially normalization of economic conditions. So, on the institutional essentially factor, the CEOs and essentially CTOs, all the board members coming out, they're actually all talking very positive about the crypto space. Now, they weren't the only ones. There's a lot more CEO perspectives we're going to go through on tonight's live. But every CEO is technically now weighing in on the side of we're still heading towards $250,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year, even though we had a government shutdown, China-US tension situation, Ukraine-Russia tension situation, China-Taiwan essentially tension situations, and also the Middle East scenario as well. Besides all of that, a lot of CEOs, CTOs, board members from the institutional sector are still coming out and saying, nope, we're still heading towards $250,000 Bitcoins, and we're still going to be having a massive rally inside the crypto space. Now, regarding the China and US situation, seems to be calming down now. So China and US economic teams achieve a framework for an agreement between the US and China. Now that is brilliant news. That means the crypto markets can finally start moving towards essentially a better position towards the bullish sector. China and US economic teams concluded productive talks in essentially Kuala Lumpur on essentially October 26, reaching a framework agreement, easing essentially potential trade tensions between the two nations. So it seems like China might not be facing that 155% tariff situation that was suggested by essentially Trump. China essentially regarding geopolitical tensions, they are calming down now. This agreement essentially could stabilize international markets, reducing fears of heightened trade barriers and potentially impacting global economic strategies, especially amidst the current geopolitical tensions. China and US economic essentially and trade teams finalizing these discussions after 2 days in essentially Kuala. Both parties agreed on a very essentially on a very good framework, which may stabilize economic relations between these two ginormous, essentially, market spaces. US authorities indicated withdrawal and consideration of the 100% tariff situation on China. This essentially step marks a significant cooperation and potential easing of wider trade tensions. The immediate implementations of this agreement in the ceasefire, essentially in essentially these two countries coming to some sort of a resolution of the proposed essentially tariffs to be not imposed on China. While no official economic indicators have been disclosed post-agreement, both nations anticipate a much more collaborative trade essentially environment. Industry experts are also acknowledging the positive direction between these two countries now, and essentially this cooperation signifies but also emphasizes the need for ongoing dialogue between these two nations. 100% yes, that needs to be there, because just because China and the US have come to some sort of an agreement, it doesn't mean things are going to be running smoothly forever. Most likely somewhere down the line, these two countries will once again have some sort of trade tensions going on. But for the time being, things seem to be slowing down between these two nations. And China might not be seeing 155% tariff beginning of next month, which is brilliant, which means the crypto market space won't be volatile, the stock market won't be volatile, and everybody can move forward. Amazing. So it seems like Trump's tariff on China worked. And it seems like China has realized and come to its essentially senses about that. A lot of people did doubt Trump, but I'll be honest, his tariffs are definitely working. Now, moving on from the China tariff situation to Standard Chartered Bank. On Friday's live show and on Thursday's live show, I gave you two perspectives on the market space. One was from Citi and the other one was from Standard Chartered Bank regarding how the crypto market space will move forward. Citi said it's a long position, everybody buy. Standard Chartered Bank's analyst said, no, we're going to be seeing that $90,000 mark once more, and then we're back up and we're never going to see it again. Now, you fast forward from Thursday to today, Standard Chartered Bank has changed their opinion now. They're more on the side of what Citi said now. So, and it could be based on because of the China situation calming down with the US. Standard Chartered announces if Bitcoin survives this week, that we might never see 90,000 ever again. Jeffrey Kendrick, the head of digital asset research at Standard Chartered Bank, said that Bitcoin may not fall below $100,000 ever again if positive developments in global markets continue this week. Kendrick noted in a note that the progress in US trade talks with essentially, regarding the United States moving forward seems to be a positive sign. And the Treasury Secretary Scott Benson's statement over the weekend indicated that the restrictions on China rare earth exports would be postponed for a year, and Beijing is expected to purchase large quantities of US soybeans in the coming months as well, in the coming years. This agreement is expected to be formalized following Donald Trump and Xi Jinping's essentially summit in South Korea this Thursday. It's a very important deadline. These easing tensions have boosted optimism in risk markets, with essentially Bitcoin to gold ratio raising above pre-October 10 levels. And this ratio also essentially measures Bitcoin's market value relative to gold. And essentially a rise in Bitcoin's favor generally signals a rise in risk appetite. If this ratio rises above 30 again, it would signal the end of the period of fear inside the market space, and everything's just going to be going green and absolutely ballistically up. The Standard Chartered analyst also argued that further confirmation of Bitcoin's strength would be new inflows into spot Bitcoin ETFs. Kendrick also noted that the $2 billion had flown out of the US gold ETFs between Wednesday and Friday last week, said even if half of that money returns to Bitcoin ETFs this week, that would be a strong positive signal to buy. According to essentially Kendrick, Bitcoin reaching the new all-time high will be the ultimate confirmation that the market is not going to be stopping and it's just going to be going further higher. If this happens, it would be the beginning of the end for those who believe Bitcoin peaked due to the halving cycle. In other words, it means that this isn't your traditional crypto cycle, your traditional Bitcoin cycle of Bitcoin essentially goes up, Bitcoin comes down, feeds into Ethereum, Ethereum feeds into altcoins, altcoins go higher, and essentially the cycle repeats again with the Bitcoin halving 4 years down the line. I've said this for the longest time. We are not in these same cycles because in the past, we didn't have Bitcoin ETFs. We didn't have Ethereum ETFs. We didn't have major institutional players creating crypto treasuries. We didn't have governments creating crypto treasuries. We didn't have countries declaring themselves as crypto country or Bitcoin countries in terms of El Salvador. We didn't have cities creating essentially, the idea of pensions going into crypto ETFs. We didn't have any of these things. We had nothing. We only had the 4-year cycles of the crypto space, and that was it. So having all these things in play with the institutions, the regulations, the treasuries, the pension funds, and everything else, and the utility regarding the regulations we're going to be having, thinking that these cycles are going to be the exact same play out is absolutely ludicrous because it just can't be. And that is essentially what Kendrick, the head of research at Standard Chartered Bank, is saying right now, that we're not in the same cycles. We haven't been in the same cycles for a while now. He said, I believe the halving cycles are no longer important and ETF inflows are much more decisive rather than the cycles that we used to rely on. The analyst also noted that the new 25 basis point interest rate cut is expected at the FOMC essentially meeting on this Wednesday, which would be even more positive for Bitcoin and the entire crypto space. Additionally, this week, the magnificent essentially 7 tech giants such as Microsoft, Meta, Google, Apple, and Amazon, as well as crypto companies such as Coinbase, Strategy, are also expected to release their financial results. And Kendrick concluded his assessments with this bold statement. If this week goes well, Bitcoin may never fall below $100,000 ever again. It's a very bold statement coming essentially from Kendrick from Standard Chartered Bank. But I could see where he's coming from essentially. Up to some extent, I can see where he's coming from because he's saying that we're not in the same cycles. This is a different ball game, and it's been a different ball game for a while. Now, moving on from what Standard Chartered Bank has set from essentially their head research, Kendrick, to IBM. Before we talk about IBM, let's go inside the comment section first. Let's see what's happening there, and then we'll go straight into the IBM news. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions or comments, go for it inside the comment section. So let's see where we're at inside the comment section. We were here. Evening Miles and CMF, talking to Caesar. How you doing? How high do you think BTC will be end of the year? The estimates from these essentially from these banks, from these institutions, their head of researchers, they're all estimated between 150 to 250,000 by the end of the year if things run smoothly. I would put it in the same range if things will, because 150 is not that far-fetched. 250,000 might be, but 150,000 isn't that far-fetched in any sort of way. Based on essentially, we come out of a government shutdown, we go into essentially the Clarity Act, and essentially more ETFs are starting to happen. So based on that, 150 isn't far-reach, essentially far-fetched in any sort of way, I would say. Good evening, Miles and CMF members. Good to see you as well, Scott. How you doing? However, if we have more inflows, then 200,000 is also possible. Sorry, I forgot about the time. I am glad one of my family members reminded me. Let's go, Scott. Good to see you, brother. How you doing? Hi, Miles of CMF, Metals Ecosystem, Sloan, XRP, Metal, Dow, XRP 262 on Lobster. Very important to spread all, not just XRP, XLM, so on. There's more to do your research. Golden Dragon, thank you for that info. Hi, Miles of CMF, Stormy. Good to see you. How you doing? Is true Sol Litecoin ETF are going to go live, but not XRP. Now, on the news that if people are spreading this actually on X regarding Solana, HBAR, Litecoin are going to go and have an ETF and XRP isn't, is an absolute big lie. It's just a massive lie. One, the SEC is understaffed, essentially, regarding the government shutdown situation. So therefore, no ETFs are going to be passing through. And all those deadlines are from previous deadlines before essentially the SEC created this fast track for ETFs. So everybody that keeps on tweeting out the deadlines for all these ETFs, they're all wrong. because technically they had to refile under the fast track, essentially, ETF that the SEC created. But then straight away we had a government shutdown, so it's just all wrong. So anyone spreading essentially on X, Solana, Litecoin ETFs are going to be happening first before anything else. Complete lie. Nobody knows when they're going to be happening by the looks of it, but they are obviously going to be happening. XRP ETFs, Solana ETFs, Litecoin ETFs, and Dogecoin, and more ETFs are going to be happening, obviously. But we need to come out of a government shutdown. But it's not that those are going to be happening first in any sort of way. Nobody knows if they are or if they're not. So if anybody's spreading that, they're just lying and using it for clickbait information on X. I love this show. Let's go, Messi. Love you too, brother. Hi, Miles and family. Alex, good to see you. How you doing? Greetings, Miles and CMF. Lena, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Now, IBM. Regarding essentially the topic we were talking about beforehand, before we enter the comment section, which was regarding institutions, regulations, and things are a lot more different inside the crypto space. On that topic, IBM unveils the digital asset, essentially haven, to bring crypto into the corporate systems. International Business Essentially Machines Corporations, IBM, an American multinational technology company, has launched a digital asset haven today. This new platform, created essentially to help banks, businesses, and government agencies manage their digital assets. According to the release, the platform is built in partnership with DFNS, wallet infrastructure provider, and will be available in the fourth essentially quarter of 2025 as a software as a service, essentially a SaaS solution. The firm said in its plans to expand it to the on-premise, essentially, deployments by the second quarter of 2026. Digital Asset Haven will allow institutions to store and send and manage their cryptocurrencies while essentially staying compliant with financial rules. It connects essentially with more than 40 blockchain networks, including public and private ones, so users can access decentralized finance. And also essentially opportunities such as the on-chain yields directly through IBM's infrastructure. This is massive news. IBM essentially doing this for the entire crypto space. It honestly shows more confidence towards the crypto space. And let's not forget, IBM is also a partner of essentially Metico, Metico being a Ripple essentially company. The platform also comes with identity verifications, AML tools, and policy governance features to help users meet regulatory standards. IBM said this system is designed to meet the same security standards as traditional banking systems. It uses the multi-essential computation, the MPC, which is ironically what Ripple uses now as well, in its signing process to ensure that no party possesses the private essentially signing keys. It also adapts the use of IBM's Crypto Express HSM along with the Hyper Protect virtual service to ensure that sensitive data stays private, which is the number one thing institutions and banks care about, keeping their information private. IBM's offline signing essential orchestrator, supported by DNFS since October 16, 2025, adds an extra layer of protection through an automated cold storage system, which is ironically what IBM, Standard Chartered, IBM, HSBC, Metico were creating together alongside essentially Ripple, a cold storage wallet for institutions. The orchestrator creates a digital air gap between online and offline signing environments using isolated IBM Z hardware. Together with IBM, we've built a platform that goes beyond custody to orchestrate the full digital essentially asset ecosystem, paving the way for digital assets to move from pilot programs to essentially production at a global scale, said the CEO of DFNS. Now, this new platform is entering the markets already served by essentially Coral, Microsoft, and Amazon, who already offer similar blockchain services. However, IBM hopes to stand out by focusing on security and reliability, especially after AWS recent outage affected several crypto platforms, which is perfect timing for this company to be thriving through essentially IBM, because we did have a massive outage situation regarding AWS. And that's what happens when the entire world is relying on one particular company for all their servers. Now, five essentially finalists emerge for the Federal Reserve chair. The biggest thing for the crypto space is going to be removing Jerome Powell, because we've changed the SEC from hating crypto to now loving crypto. We've changed the CFTC from hating crypto to loving crypto. We did the exact same thing with the OCC, the FDIC, and the list just goes on after Trump became president. Every one of these governmental organizations became pro-crypto straight after Trump's presidency. And the only one that's pretty much left on the list is the Fed, and we need to get rid of Jerome Powell. Now, it's going to be difficult to remove him, but the good news is his term is coming to an end, and somebody needs to replace him. So, 5 essentially finalists are emerging for the Federal Reserve chair right now. And the most important thing for us is he pro-crypto? The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, announced a shortlist of 5 candidates for the next Federal Reserve chair today. He made the announcement while speaking to reporters on Air Force One, revealing a mix of current Fed leadership and external financial expertise. The 5 essentially candidates, according to Bessent, include Christopher Waller, a current member of the Fed board, Michelle Bowman, who is also a current Fed board member and serves as the vice chair for supervision. The list also includes Kevin Walsh, a former Fed governor, Kevin Hansard, essentially who is the director of the White House National Economic Council, Rick essentially Ryder, the chief investment officer of global fixed incomes at BlackRock. The president is also expected to make his final decisions by the end of the year. Christopher Waller confirmed that he had been interviewed by Secretary essentially Scott Bessent for this position. The interview lasted 1 hour and 45 minutes and covered topics such as economics, monetary policy, the Fed, and the essentially economy in general. Waller stated that he would accept the position if the president believes he is the best choice for the role. The candidates also bring a mix of experience from within essentially the Fed and from essentially external financial roles that they've had in the past. Waller has been a member of the Fed since 2020 with previous experiences at St. Lucia's Fed. Bowman also joined the board back in 2018 and became a vice chair for essentially supervision in 2025. Warish also served as the Fed governor from 2006 to 2011, playing essentially a key role during the 2008 financial crisis. Hansen also is the current NEC director at essentially the former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. Ryder manages a $2.4 trillion at BlackRock and sits on several financial advisory essentially committees. The new Fed chair will succeed, and Jerome Powell, whose term ends essentially in 2025 pretty much. The nominee must be confirmed by the Senate. The appointee of the new Federal Reserve chair is a significant event that can have wide-ranging implications for financial markets, including especially cryptocurrencies. If the new chair is more open to digital assets or less restrictive on financial innovation, it could lead to more favorable conditions for cryptocurrency adoption within the United States and even on a global scale. However, a hawkish Fed stance could curb speculation on riskier assets, including cryptocurrencies, and the next Fed chair approach to digital assets will be closely watched by investors worldwide, as it will likely set the tone for cryptocurrency regulations and investment strategies for years to come. So, new Fed member could pretty much change the entire game for the crypto space, to be fairly honest. Because as I said, SEC, CFTC, FDIC, OCC, the list just goes on. All these governmental organizations are now pro-crypto because of Trump. The only one that hasn't been so far is the Fed because of Jerome Powell, but his time is coming to an end. And the people that are technically being chosen to replace him, most likely, because knowing what essentially Trump's administration stands for, is most likely going to be pro-crypto. So it's going to play out very favorably for us inside the crypto sector, in my opinion, knowing Trump's administration, because the White House does, essentially crypto events, essentially talking with crypto CEOs. So you can see where they stand. So I would say Trump or his administration will definitely be choosing somebody who understands cryptocurrencies or wants to understand it and wants America to innovate in that sector, in my opinion. Now, moving on from that to XRP, Solana, Litecoin, ETF approvals in 2 weeks. So, the co-founder of ETF Institute, Nate essentially Gersey, has predicted the deadlines for a number of altcoin ETF applications, naming them especially as well by saying XRP, Solana, and Litecoin filings. He implied that the next 2 weeks could be a window for potential regulatory breakthroughs. In a recent social media post, Nate stated, next 2 weeks, spot XRP, spot Solana, and spot Litecoin, and other ETF filings all lined up and ready for launch. Asset manager Carry Capital recently filed Form 8A documents to register shares for perspectives of spot Litecoin and essentially HBOR ETFs as well. Similarly, Bitwise's CEO Hunter also revealed that the company filed for the Form 8A previously and continues to be active filer inside the space. Bitwise also recently amended its Solana ETF filings ahead of the SEC approvals. Meanwhile, essentially, Grayscale filed the amended S1 registration statement to officially launch the spot Dogecoin ETF. The final approvals hinge on the US Securities Exchange Commission (SEC). Recent reports indicate that the decision deadlines for several altcoin ETF filings have recently elapsed, essentially without official word due to the temporarily closed government situation. And due to the recent government shutdown, approvals have been halted. Industry insiders suggest that once the SEC is operating at full capacity, a streamlined process could follow. This process would be supported by new regulatory frameworks adopted by the SEC, which are expected to simplify the path for crypto ETFs. The launch of an XRP ETF is considered a potential bullish catalyst for cryptocurrencies. Though the spot ETF's traditional investors can gain exposure to XRP without directly holding the asset, potentially gaining billions of dollars in new capital in the ecosystem. The launch of a CME traded XRP futures earlier this year was seen by many, including essentially Nate, as a crucial step towards a spot ETF for XRP to be happening. Currently, several major investment firms, including Grayscale, Bitwise, and WisdomTree, have applications pending with the SEC. These applications were to be closed mid-October. However, the financial community watches closely for the coming weeks are seen to be a pivotal moment for the crypto space regarding ETFs. I was also asked the question essentially last week, if I'm not mistaken, regarding when do I think essentially crypto ETFs will be passing through because we have a government shutdown. I said once the government shutdown ends, expect weeks. Within weeks, we should be getting some sort of announcements regarding crypto ETFs because the companies that filed for crypto ETFs aren't just sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens. They're doing discussions with the SEC. They're doing discussions essentially with board members. They're doing discussions with the Republicans, with the Democrats, with essentially the Senate. They're having sit-downs and having discussions also about the Clarity Act. They've essentially amended their filings, their previous filings for the new fast-track, essentially SEC filings. So everything's being done behind the scenes. So when the SEC is back up and operational again, and essentially the government shutdown has ended, they should be live within a couple of weeks, which then will make the crypto market space go absolutely ballistic. And if it doesn't, we have ETFs essentially going live when we don't have essentially ballistic market spaces. Don't be alarmed. It's just the manipulation sector. Once that passes, then we'll have ballistic movements inside the crypto space. Now, Coinbase is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. Before we talk about Coinbase, let's move to the comment section. And we've seen so far what happens when you have XRP futures, essentially ETF going on, and it did tremendously well. It brought in more volume than Bitcoin and Ethereum did when they had essentially some sort of futures ETFs going on. Now, let's go to the comment section first before we go through the next news on tonight's live. And the next news is regarding Coinbase. So let's see what's happening first here. We were, I think, here. Greetings, Miles and CMF. Lena, good to see you. How you doing? Hi, Miles and CMF. John, good to see you. How you doing? Hi, Miles and CMF. Woodhouse, good to see you. How you doing? How's CoinMove and family? CoinMove is great. Family is also great as well. Thanks so much for asking, Woodhouse. How you been? How's your family? Do you think XRP can reach $25 to $30 with spot ETFs only? Do I think XRP can reach $20 to essentially $30 with spot ETFs only? Yes, it's highly possible. Depending on the amount of liquidity coming in, yes, very possible. And why Zcash rallies so much? Zcash is used for washing, if you know what I mean. Zcash is used for washing. So whenever you see essentially Zcash going up in price or Monero going up in price, it's mostly to do with washing. They say HBAR sold ETF live tomorrow. No, it can't be, because if it is, that'd be tremendously interesting, because the SEC is closed. Not closed, but they're very understaffed. so they can't pass anything. The only thing the SEC can do is process emergency filings. ETFs are not really emergency for them. Good evening, Miles and family. Ian, good to see you. How you doing? How will we take money from XRP if we don't want to sell any when it goes to say 100 very soon and the banks are not ready to loan on it? Well, it's not just the banks that can borrow you against it. There are platforms out there that are regulated, like, for example, Nexo, that you can use to borrow against it. Again, none of this financial advice in any sort of way. But there are different methods. John, if you want, message me after the live, and I'll go into more detail for you. Now, Coinbase is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. Coinbase partners with Citi for institutional digital payments. Coinbase and Citi have announced a partnership to explore digital payments and stablecoin payouts for Citi's institutional clients, focusing on improving on-ramps and essentially off-ramps between fiat and digital assets. This is brilliant news on Coinbase's side and for the entire crypto sector. The collaboration highlights growing institutional interest in blockchain technology, potentially enhancing payments and efficiency and security, though immediate market impacts remain undetermined. Citi and Coinbase have announced a collaboration aimed at exploring digital payments. They aim to integrate stablecoin payouts for institutional clients. This partnership also focuses on improving systems to convert fiat to digital assets efficiently. Our collaboration will focus on improving on-ramps and off-ramps, the system that allows institutions to convert between fiat and digital assets and ultimately enable more efficient and secure movements of value worldwide, said Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase. Citi targets its institutional clients by collaborating with Coinbase to optimize digital payment infrastructures. The initiative aims at strengthening on-ramps and off-ramps, with stablecoins essentially being a pivotal element of this entire solution. This partnership could affect digital asset sectors, potentially enhancing transaction efficiency by relying on stablecoin-based payments. It's expected to streamline payment processes among institutional clients and benefit both firms in competitive digital asset market spaces. The collaboration between these major players might lead to increased confidence among institutional investors in digital financial solutions. It marks a significant step towards broader blockchain payment integrations in essentially traditional finance environments. Industry observers anticipate measurable impacts on how institutional clients engage with essentially digital payments due to its collaboration. Operational improvements in payment systems are also expected to boost institutional stablecoin adoption significantly. The market could witness essentially advancements in payment technologies and regulations, increasing the legitimacy essentially and trust in blockchain-based solutions. Historical precedents suggest prior collaborations have gradually enhanced overall adoption rates in digital finance essential realms also. This is quite massive news, essentially, regarding Coinbase partnering up with Citi. Again, this just shows more confidence towards the crypto sector. Because the more institutions we get entering the crypto space, creating some sort of a platform for lending, borrowing, managing, custody, whatever, it's brilliant news. Even better when crypto companies start partnering with big names like Citi, Franklin Templeton, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, BNY Mellon. The list just goes on because it just adds more credibility towards the crypto space when you have these behemoths in the institutional sector taking a chance on the crypto space. Now, the next news on tonight's live is Switzerland's Bitcoin app, Rally, or Really, as how they call it, secures an MiCA license in France. So there's a Bitcoin app essentially based in Switzerland who has now been able to essentially expand within essentially the EU. Relay, a Swiss Bitcoin app, received the MiCA license from the French Financial Markets Authority, the AMF, essentially marking an unprecedented expansion in Europe's cryptocurrency regulatory landscape. This regulatory milestone strengthens essentially Relay's foothold in the European Union, allowing seamless cross-border operations and highlighting the growing trend of regulatory clarity for the entire crypto industry. Relay secures the MiCA license, enabling expansive crypto service offerings across Europe. With acquisitions of the MiCA license, Relay marks a significant progress in the crypto regulatory landscape, allowing for enhanced user experience and market essentially penetration. Now, Relay, a Swiss Bitcoin app, now holds Regarding this licensings, they will be able to offer their services to 30 essentially countries in the EU. They're thinking about even expanding further on. Now, it is just a Bitcoin app for now, but who's to say that they'll be expanding later on, essentially, in other cryptocurrencies? Most likely they will, because that's how they will probably expand their profits, essentially, more profit margins also. But also, it seems to be that they might be offering some sort of other services sooner or later inside of their app. So if you're a big Bitcoin person, that could be something you could want to be looking into. Now, moving on from Relay app to Japan. Digital yen integrates with essentially DeFi in Japan. JPYCEX. Japan Digital Currency Co. Limited launched the JPYC stablecoin and the JPYCEX platform, marking a significant step in integrating traditional finance and decentralized finance, essentially regulated stablecoin innovations, now impacting DeFi protocols and potentially increasing market liquidity and adoption in the Japanese market space. Japan Digital Currency Co. Limited launches the JPYCEX, the first regulated platform for issuance of a stablecoin in the Japanese market space. The launch bridges traditional finance and DeFi, showcasing Japan's regulatory framework for stablecoin innovation. And regarding essentially this, the world's first ever regulated yen stablecoin infrastructure. This launch aims to enhance integration between traditional finance and decentralized finance platforms. Key figures also include Mishibu, and Narushu, who lead the launch of JPYC. Their essentially actions underscores a pioneering approach in regulated digital finance within the Japanese market space. The launch's immediate effects on financial markets include increased interoperability between the yen-peg stablecoin and existing essentially DeFi protocols. This integration offers new liquidity pools and engaged with Ethereum-based platforms. The initiative also carries potential financial implications by expanding access to yen-pegged essentially assets for global markets. It also essentially highlights Japan's proactive regulatory stance in the evolving digital currency landscape. And this is essentially what their CEO had to say regarding this massive news coming out that Japan has got its first regulated yen stablecoin. Now, again, this isn't from the Japanese government in any sort of a way. It is coming from essentially a private company, but it is regulated. So therefore, it's the first ever regulated yen stablecoin. We are proud to launch the world's first regulated yen stablecoin infrastructure aimed at bringing compliant digital finance to both Japan and the global markets, said the CEO of Currency Co. Limited. Similar events like the launch of the USDC and euros essentially have historically resulted in greater stablecoin adoption and increased essentially DeFi applications. This move essentially aligns with existing trends towards regulatory compliant digital assets. Based on historical market and essentially adaptations, JPYCEX could drive initial value increases in decentralized exchanges. Experts also suggest that enhancing regulatory access to stablecoins may inspire further innovations on global stablecoin frameworks also. So this is quite massive news essentially coming up from Japan, the first ever regulated yen essentially stablecoin. Stablecoins do tend to provide quite a lot of liquidity towards the market space, especially when the market is down, it's not doing too well. Stablecoins start printing, Tether starts printing, USDC starts printing, and the money that gets printed, obviously backed by some sort of fiat or bonds or so ever, then going back inside the market space when the market is not at much more of a risky essentially market space, pumping the crypto market space even further. Now, Japan having its own regulated stablecoin, it's even better news because we could expect, not overnight, but over time, more liquidity coming in from the Japanese market space towards the crypto sector as well, going forward, getting paired with all types of essentially currencies alongside them on Binance or essentially Bitwise, all these major exchanges, and Coinbase and Crypto.com and so on. Now, moving on from Japan and onto China. But before we talk about China, let's go inside the comment section first. Let's see where we're at inside the comment section. We were at here. Also, as I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions, go for it inside the comment section. Or any comments, more than happy to help you out. Let's see where we're at. I don't understand this government shutdown thing. I don't have any idea how it works or why it happened. The reason we had a government shutdown situation is because they didn't get the votes, the amount of votes that they needed to keep the government operational for them to be able to print, obviously for the money to be flowing in. Therefore, essentially, we had a government shutdown. Now, we also had a government shutdown on the scenario, on the basis of that the Democrats essentially wanted to push some of their agendas inside of it, which Trump is not having it in any sort of way. And Trump isn't the type of person that essentially would give in to anyone's demands. He's normally the one that makes the demands, not really gives into them. The Democrats think that they can make Trump essentially give in to their demands. They're mistaken if they ever think that's going to be happening. The government's going to be shut down for the next 10 years if that was the case. I'll be very honest. Obviously, time's not going to be lasting that long, but you see the scenario. Trump is never going to give in to the Democrats' demands in any sort of a way. Now, the Democratic Party, we only need technically, essentially, if I'm not mistaken, 5 to 6 votes for the government to open back up. And regarding a government shutdown, a lot of people do end up losing their jobs because there's no money to essentially pay their wages. The ones that do stay on, they don't get paid, but they can still come to work if they don't get laid off. The SEC essentially gets understaffed. The CFTC gets understaffed. The White House gets technically a little bit understaffed as well, cleaners and so on. But in general, every governmental worker is on this. Depending on what level you're at inside the government, you're on the verge of losing essentially your job. Also, the US military got paid by a private donor for $130 million, if I'm not mistaken. $130 million. Someone came in, a private donor decided to pay the US military, the soldiers essentially, regarding this whole government shutdown situation going on. So, it's mainly to do with the Democrats and the Republicans not having some sort of a, middle ground in any sort of a way. The Democrats are trying to push for healthcare for illegals, immigrants, essentially inside the United States. Trump's party doesn't want to fund healthcare for illegal immigrants in any sort of a way. Now, this is billions of dollars we're talking about in the long run. That's one of the factors. There's many other factors in play, but that's essentially not going to be flying past the Republicans. So, in hindsight, it has to be the Democrats that have to come towards the table and also what the Democrats are not understanding, most importantly, is that the longer the government shutdown continues, the more Trump has power, which I don't mind because he's done a lot of things for the crypto space, and I love that. But the Democratic politicians are too stupid to realize that the longer we have a government shutdown, the more Trump can get away with anything he wants. Because in the past, if he wanted to do something, there was too many, you can't do this, you can't do that. Now, because we have a government shutdown, Trump can pretty much get away with anything he wants. And nobody can say anything about it because there's a government shutdown. So it's not really working out in favor of Democrats having a government shutdown because Trump is getting away with everything he wants now, which is something that they hate, but ironically not realizing that it's not working out in their favor, which, to be fair, somewhere down the line, it went really bad for Democrats, and they're just digging a bigger hole for themselves. Now, so that's what's happening regarding this whole shutdown situation, Woodhouse. Shelly also asked the question as well, how long can the shutdown go on for? The shutdown could go on for as long as it wants, to be fairly honest. The longest the government shutdown has been so far is 35 days, but I think we just beat that. Just an opinion, I see XRP going to $100 before the year's end, and if the government opens. Fair enough, Scott. I like that. The Dems and Reps both are at fault. I'm not a Trump fan and must say neither party can blame him. I agree. I agree with Trump's. I agree with Scott's statement. The Dems and Republicans are both at fault. I agree, and neither can essentially blame him in any sort of. I agree with essentially Scott's statement. Both parties are serving essentially themselves, not the people who they represent. I agree, 100%. In general, all politicians, I mean, they're not the most greatest people. I agree. X11 XDC and HBAR will do well, but XRP is where I'm hedging my bet. Let's go, Scott. In your opinion, how long after Ripple Prime, Evernorth, etc., go live will take for a big price appreciation? Very quickly or a slow burner? It could be either way. It could be very quickly or it could be a slow burner and then very quickly. It won't be an overnight type of scenario. It'll be like within days and weeks and months, and then you'll see the actions, you'll see the liquidity flowing in more and more as we go along. I was the donor, sold XRP. Well done, Messi, for funding the US military 130 million. How long can the shutdown go on for? As long as it wants. And cheers for the response, Miles. No problem, Woodhouse, anytime. Now, China. China AMC launches a Solana ETF on Hong Kong Exchange. China AMC's spot Solana ETF has begun essentially trading on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, marking its Asia first physically backed Solana ETF. This development enhances Hong Kong's regulatory crypto investment landscape, potentially increasing institutional interest and influencing Solana's market dynamics. China Asset Management Company Limited, China AMC, has officially launched the first ever Solana ETF in the Asian market space, now trading on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. China AMC leads the effort with the essentially OSL Digital Securities as the infrastructure partner. The ETF allows direct and regulated exposure to Solana, marking a significant step for Hong Kong's regulated crypto product portfolios. The launch is anticipated to broaden investment access by eliminating the need for investors to hold Solana tokens directly. The ETF trading essentially multiple currencies also facilitates wider participation across financial markets. The ETF essentially is trading live on Hong Kong Stock Exchange, marking Asia's first physically backed Solana ETF, said the essentially China Asset Management Company Limited on their own social platforms. Financial analysts also project initial global inflows to Solana ETFs to be about $1.5 billion over time, not overnight, reflecting initial volume compared to Ethereum ETFs. The ETF is expected to boost institutional demand for Solana, influencing liquidity. The ETF's approval highlights Hong Kong's ambition to lead in digital asset financial products. It positions the region as progressive crypto finance hubs, despite global regulatory hesitancy towards similar products. And historically, the introduction of spot Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs in Hong Kong drew notable institutional attention. Also, although demand tailored US markets, such as launches, have fostered regulatory clarity and infrastructure investments in digital finance. What is very, very interesting about this regarding China AMC launching a Solana ETF is that China also made the announcements today that they don't want, in any sort of a way, China to be involved in essentially crypto projects or crypto companies or crypto anything, to be fairly honest. But China AMC, based out of Hong Kong, doesn't really care. Now, I've noticed this for a while now, that bigger players inside the Chinese sector, inside Chinese markets, through Hong Kong, are trying to get more involved inside the crypto space, whereas the People's Bank of China, their central bank, is not really in favor of this. But it seems like the institutions don't care. The Chinese institutions don't care what the People's Bank of China has to say, and they want to be more involved inside the crypto sector. It seems like they're all almost making their own decisions. It's going to play out better for them if they do that. Now, and I'll be very honest as well, China only became bitter towards the crypto sector even more, based on what Anton said, the Russian advisor for Putin, about 3 weeks back. The Russian advisor, essentially Anton, said to Putin and to the entire world that he thinks that Trump is going to be using stablecoins to essentially wipe out, or crypto in general, to wipe out the US debt. Mostly we're going to stablecoins. And then the next day, China decided to ban any sort of stablecoins from Chinese companies in Hong Kong. So China got very bitter on the idea that the US is about to be wiping their entire country debt on stablecoins. So China just said to Hong Kong, no Chinese firms are allowed to be launching stablecoins in any sort of way. They're just really very bitter towards stablecoins because they think, well, the US is about to wipe out their debt. You fast forward to essentially yesterday, there was a video that was circulating with Trump suggesting that, you could just use crypto to wipe out the American debt. Just write it on a piece of paper, this much to essentially to the American debt, this much in crypto, wiped out, gone, which is going to be angering China even more based on that as well. Now, Because imagine America, the biggest market space on the planet, the most strongest country on the planet, having a clean slate. That is pretty much China's worst nightmare. Regarding the Chinese government, not the people of China, amazing people. Regarding the Chinese government, that is the worst nightmare the Chinese government could possibly have. That the Americans will have a clean state and their debt is wiped off completely. Now, Michael, confirmed as the CFTC nomination as agency faces leadership void. The CFTC still doesn't technically have a essentially chairman. The SEC does, but the CFTC still doesn't. And then Michael seems to be the chosen person for this lead. The US essentially SEC official Michael Sling announced that President Donald Trump had nominated him to chair the CFTC. The most important thing for us is that, is he pro-crypto? Citing a focus on crypto policies, even better. The move still requires Senate approval and comes as the agency operates with several open seats. Essentially, a post coming from Sling and the White House crypto and AI essentially Caesar David Sachs confirmed reports that Trump would nominate him to chair the CFTC, citing the groundwork essentially for the departure of acting chair Caroline Pham. Sling, whose nomination did not appear in congressional records nor essentially among financial White House announcements at the time of publication, retreated Trump's global of the essentially making of the US in terms of the crypto capital. The nomination came amid the US government shutdown entering its fifth week after Republican Democrat lawmakers in Congress were unable to reach some sort of an agreement over the bills through, and the Senate is still able to pass legislations during a shutdown, including potential and digital asset market structure bills, and lawmakers priority, while likely being continuing to resolutions to fund the government. Since the departure of the CFTC Commissioner Christian Johnson in September, the agency's 5-member leadership panel has been essentially filed solely by Caroline Pham, who also said she intends to depart the regulator after a replacement is confirmed in the Senate. As of Monday, essentially the Senate had not set a confirmation hearing for Sling. Sling's nomination came after Trump withdrew essentially Brian's name essentially from the consideration, whom he announced at his pick in February. Gemini co-founders Cameron and Tyler reportedly pressed essentially the White House to choose another candidate after essentially Brian was unable to give assurance to the crypto billionaires on enforcement policies. The only reason that Brian was the first pick, essentially because they thought he would be the best person for the CFTC chair because he will be pro-crypto. Turns out Brian was not really the best choice in any sort of way because he wasn't pro-crypto. But this Michael person is. Cointelegraph spoke to former CFTC chair Chris, known to be to many by the essentially Monkier, essentially crypto dad, on how the current political and legal environments could be affected by changing leaderships at the commodities essentially regulator. It would be very difficult for the CFTC to implement the rulemaking that's required under the Clarity Act essentially and under the acting chair without a full commission or at least a partial commission set essentially. Garcia, I think Chris essentially said, I think the White House is very aware of that, and they're not essentially very decisive of getting the CFTC up to its staffing requirements so they can get on with their business, but also so that they can implement the pending Clarity Act so it can move forward. The White House had not announced any other nominations to the CFTC leadership apart from Michael so far. So, one, they are having active discussions regarding the Clarity Act, which is brilliant. That's still going on, and they technically can pass it, coming from essentially what they're saying now. So they can pass the Clarity Act during this government shutdown, which is amazing. Imagine in the government shutdown, we have the Clarity Act passing through. I think it will pass through even easier during a government shutdown than it would when the government's fully operational, to be fairly honest, because the Democrats will think of something else on how to stop the Clarity Act. You know, Senator Elizabeth Warren will try her best into stopping the Clarity Act for the crypto space, and so would Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the, freak show groups. But during government shutdown, actually might be easier to pass the Clarity Act, let's be honest with ourselves. But most importantly, Michael seems to be the chosen candidate for the CFTC chair, extremely pro-crypto by the looks of it. Now, moving on from the CFTC chair to Circle and Clearbank. ClearBank has joined the Circle Payments Network, expanding access to MiC-compliant stablecoins like USDC and EuroC for institutional and fintech clients in Europe, as essentially announced today. This move accelerates regulated cross-border payments, enhancing liquidity and transparency for the European financial institutions, while also aligning with the MiC regulations. ClearBank has joined the Circle Payments Network, enhancing European access to MiC-compliant stablecoins. This collaboration aims to accelerate regulated cross-border payments that benefit fintechs and institutional clients. ClearBank and Circle are key players in this initiative. ClearBank focuses on digital infrastructure, while Circle essentially focuses on issuing their USDC, EuroC stablecoins. The partnership reflects a commitment to innovation and regulatory adherence. Immediate industry impacts include essentially improved liquidity and reduced resilience on traditional banking methods. This partnership also aims to streamline transactions, affecting a wide range of sectors inside the institutional sector in Europe. The collaboration also signifies a shift in financial landscapes, offering businesses faster and more transparent settlements. Regulated alignments with the MiC ensures a secure framework for institutional-grade asset flows. The partnership also aligns with broader trends towards regulated digital cryptocurrency assets. Circle's infrastructure also is expected to boost liquidity for USDC and EuroC, providing significant advantages to participating financial institutions. The integration also will foster new financial services that deliver faster settlements and greater transparency for businesses and consumers across Europe, said essentially Circle's VP Partnership and Business Development. That is quite big news regarding Circle expanding even further inside the European zones with ClearBank now. All of this is essentially very great news for the crypto space. Again, more institutions joining the crypto space, banks joining the crypto space even further on. Now, moving on from Circle to Ripple. Before we talk about Ripple, let's go inside the comment section first, and then we'll go into Ripple news on tonight's live. Let's see where we're at inside the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you have any comments or questions, go for it inside the comment section. So let's see what's happening there. Cheers for we're here. Lunacy and Shiba. Let's go, Thompson. He's also pro Ripple regarding Michael. Yes, I've heard he is, yeah. Hello again, everyone. Thompson, good to see you. So how you doing? I pray to God Warren never makes a penny from any crypto. Let's go for him further. Yeah, honestly, Pocahontas is absolutely annoying. I mean, I don't know who keeps on voting for Pocahontas. Just don't understand why people do that. Now, moving on from that to Ripple. Not only is Ripple trying to expand inside the financial sector, or expand in terms of getting licensings on a global scale, or essentially expand in terms of the acquisitions they're making around the world. But Ripple is also trying to expand in the educational sector as well. Now, Ripple has been investing in essentially university projects for blockchain and frameworks and the XRP ledger to get students involved on building and understanding blockchain, especially through the XRP ledger, which I think is a brilliant tactic, because you're then covering all sectors of the market space. You're covering the institutional sector, you're also covering the retail sector, and now covering essentially the educational sector is just a brilliant concept, in my opinion. So, Ripple expands academic collaboration with new advisory council, University of San Francisco partnership, and UBRI renewals in ORL-USD. Ripple is strengthening its commitment to academic innovation and blockchain research through new and renowned partnerships under its University Blockchain Research Initiative, UBRI. This next chapter includes a formation of an advisory council of the world-class researchers, a new collaboration with the University of San Francisco, and over $1.5 million in renowned essentially university partnerships funded entirely through Ripple using ORL-USD, Ripple's US essentially backed dollar stablecoin. Together, these initiatives underscore UBRI's long-term vision to advance blockchain research, education, and real-world application by connecting the world's leading and universities with Ripple's technology. In terms of research and expertise, UBRI has long been a cornerstone of Ripple's investment in innovation, supporting more than 60 universities supporting more than 60, just, because we've talked about Ripple essentially funding education. For example, in Ireland, they did that, also in the US and a few other essential nations. But now Ripple is essentially funding education, helping students understand blockchain even better, especially the XRP ledger, through 60 essential universities worldwide, committing over $80 million in research so far, funding since 2018. Now, with the launch of Ripple's advisory council, Ripple is formalizing a new structure for collaboration across its global academic network. The council brings together XRP Ledger co-creator David Schwartz. So you can technically tell why essentially David Schwartz has taken a step back now from CTO, because his job is done, and now essentially he's on the board of the education side of the XRP Ledger, showcasing it to students worldwide through 60 universities. David Schwartz, with essentially a group of distinguished cryptographers and computer scientists handpicked from across the UBRI's partner universities, including Dr. Haytash, the Trinity College Dublin applied cryptographer exploring zero-knowledge proofs on the XRP ledger; Dr. Yubu Feng, the Technological University researching blockchain security, privacy, and AI systems on the XRP ledger; Dr. Hang essentially University, leading work on ZK snarks and privacy-preserving cryptographies on the XRP ledger; Dr. Rudo State, University of Luxembourg, focused on smart contracts and networks and management and cybersecurity on the XRP ledger. The list just goes on. The advisory council also will essentially advance technical innovation and research that are directly relative to Ripple's products and explore topics critical to the evolution of the XRP ledger, including but not limited to research areas around zero-knowledge virtual machines, DeFi adoption, and long-term impacts of quantum computing on blockchain systems. This is what Ripple is teaching students essentially through 60 universities worldwide, so far funded $80 million. For blockchains to truly evolve, we need a consistent exchange of ideas between those essentially building in the technology and those studying its future, said David Schwartz, the Chief Technology Officer at Ripple. Through essentially UBRI and Ripple's new advisory council, we're deepening the collaboration, bringing together academic researchers and essentially Ripple's engineers to explore new applications for XRP and also its native chain that could ultimately move this growing ecosystem forward even further. Across more than 60 universities worldwide, UBRI continues to drive cutting-edge research, from the Imperial College of London's study on stablecoins and the UK's financial future to Stanford's multi-year dataset essentially proving stablecoin payments and outperforming traditional rails in speed and cost. These partnerships, paired with the new advisory council and RRUSD's powered funding model, demonstrates how Ripple is helping bridge theory and application research and product education and innovation within these students. Ripple is reinforcing the idea that innovation starts with education and grows through collaboration. What Ripple is achieving with these students is absolutely incredible, absolutely smart, to be fairly honest, because funding over 60 universities worldwide, $80 million so far spent, and the last 1.5 million spent was spent in RLUSD on these universities to teach these students what the XRP ledger can do, what blockchain technology can do, how can XRP ledger survive on the quantum computing, how essentially bringing AI to the XRP ledger is beneficial, how doing payments or essentially building something on XRP ledger. This is a brilliant move from Ripple. Absolutely intelligent move from Ripple, to be fairly honest, because as I said, they're covering the institutional sector. Ripple by far is the best company inside the blockchain sector, in my opinion. Probably most about everyone's opinions, if we're based on facts. If you base on the amount of essentially partners Ripple has, the NDAs it has, the contracts it has on a global scale, the acquisitions it's made, you don't hear about AVAX Foundation, for example, buying out a company for $1 billion to expand AVAX. You don't hear from Solana trying to buy a company to expand Solana for over $1 billion. You don't hear from Ethereum. You don't hear from any of these corporations in any sort of way, or foundations essentially inside the crypto sector. But you do hear from Ripple because, they're trying to essentially advance in every sector. Inside the institutional sector, they're trying to do it, and they've done a great job at it. And by far, they're the best companies in the blockchain sector. Inside the retail section, they've done it as well. And also now through the educational sector, massive play from Ripple, to be fairly honest. I don't see anybody doing this in any sort of a way at all. I haven't heard from any foundations, essentially from Solano's side, Ethereum side, AVAX's side, or any other blockchain project out there doing anything to put their tokens at the heart of everything. The same way essentially Brad said. But in my opinion, this is amazing. And if anybody wants to go and check it out, you could go on Ripple's own website and check out on their blog section regarding Ripple investing in all these universities and what they're bringing towards the table. That's just a glimpse of what I've given you tonight, essentially on this live show, what Ripple is doing for these universities to get them educated on the blockchain, especially on the XRP ledger at a young age. Also, we have the Ripple Swell event coming up very soon as well. Big names on that as well. But more to talk about that the closer we get to Ripple Swell events. On that note, we have reached the endings of tonight's live. This was episode 395 of the CMF Live. Episode 396 will be tomorrow at essentially 10 p.m. London time onwards, UK time in other words. Tune in for tomorrow's episode as well for episode 396 of the CMF Live. The CMF stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles. You can tune to this live Monday, Friday, 10 p.m. long time onwards. The most recent news regarding cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, politics, regulations, pretty much vital information for you to know about regarding the world completely transforming into a digital space. And the disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice. Whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. So before we do go, obviously, let's go start the comment section first. This is what's happening there, and then we'll call it a night and tune back in tomorrow. Let's see where we're at. We were at... Also, just to give everyone a breakdown, we did tune in a bit late. On tonight's live show, we talked about essentially Ripple expanding in the education sector even more. We talked about essentially Clearbank joining Circle's network in the EU. We also went through news topics like Michael being the CFTC head chairman by the looks of it, and he is pro-crypto. We talked about China's AMC launch. We talked about also JPYC being the first essentially yen stablecoin that's regulated. We went through news topics on regarding Swiss Bitcoin app that's essentially expanding the EU with a license now. We talked about Coinbase partnering with Citi. We also went through news on tonight's live regarding XRP, Solana, Litecoin, the perspective coming from Nate, the co-founder of essentially ETF Institutes, that we could be expecting ETFs within 2 weeks. We talked about essentially the 5 finalists emerging as the replacement for Jerome Powell because his term is coming to an end. We also went through news regarding IBM unveiling something quite amazing towards the crypto sector. We also went through news regarding Standard Chartered Bank's recent essentially perspective on the market space, which is extremely positive. We talked about China and US tensions essentially calming down, which is great news. And we went through some perspective news from CEOs on tonight's live as well. So those are all the news topics we discussed on tonight's episode. Before we do go, let's go start the comment section first. So what's happening there? Would you like to work for Ripple? Would I like to work for Ripple? Hell yes, is my answer. Yes, which also includes XLM. Scott Thompson. Good night, Miles, and all the CMF. Thank you for a great live and news. JP, no problem, brother. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. It would be an honor for anyone to work for Ripple, to be fairly honest. They're achieving so much inside the financial sector, inside of the retail sector, and the educational sector. It's a brilliant company to work for, in my opinion. I don't work for Ripple, and I don't get paid by Ripple in any sort of way either. Wish I did, but I don't. But it's a brilliant company. Honestly, a brilliant company if anybody gets to work for them. Night, Miles, the CMF. Pablo, see you tomorrow, sometimes usual. Thompson, see you tomorrow, sometimes usual. Thanks, Miles. Great live. See you all again tomorrow. Let's go, Shelly. See you tomorrow, sometimes usual. Great live, as always, Miles. Thanks, and see you tomorrow. Same time, Artistic. See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Great live, Miles. Thank you, very bullish. Good night, Miles and CMF. Jason, see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Take care, Miles and CMF. Ray, see you tomorrow, same as usual as well. Good night, Miles and CMF. Great for the great news. See you tomorrow. Free forever. See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Great love as usual. Thanks, Miles. John. Let's go. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Thank you for keeping us in the loop. You make us look good. Let's go, Susie. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Thanks, Miles, for another great evening. See you again tomorrow, mate. See you again, Addy, tomorrow, same time as usual. Good night, Miles and family. Rewatch will live later. Let's go, Ian. Good to see you. What you're doing. Thank you, Bunch Miles. Have a lovely night. Oh, let's go, Lena. See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Thank you, Miles. See you tomorrow. Mike, see you tomorrow, brother, same time as usual. Thank you so much to everybody from the CMF or anybody that isn't from the CMF either who has smashed the like buttons and smashed the retweet buttons on this live. If you haven't smashed the like buttons or retweet buttons, smash the likes, smash the retweets. If you're watching us on YouTube right now as well, thank you so much for liking the live. If you haven't, smash the like button and drop a comment outside the live. Thanks so much to everyone who has done that. If you haven't done that, take 2 to 3 seconds to like and retweet. And also, thank you so much to everybody who subscribed and followed me during this live show as well. And welcome to the CMF. I'll see everybody tomorrow, same time as usual. Everybody have a great day or a good night, depending on where you're around the world. Good night, Miles. God bless. Let's go, Cali. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. 1.1K watching right now. Absolutely amazing. Honestly. Cheers to Ripple. We need the youth educated in this area instead of the crap by the so-called scholars. I agree 1,000,000% regarding what Ray has said. I will see everybody tomorrow, same time as usual, for episode 396 of the CMF Live. Everybody have a great day or a good night, depending on where you're around the world. CMF, love you all. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. And don't forget, disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. See everybody tomorrow, same time as usual. Love you all.